Chapter 1. That is some next-level bullshit. Do you not remember what happened in Montana? Craig shrugged. I held my own. Uh-huh, scoffed Cyrus. Who fell into the river? That's not the point. It is very much the point, stated Cyrus. Quit dodging the question. Who fell in the river? The rock was slick and the current was wicked fast. Did Finn fall into the river? How about Teague? Come on, Craig protested. Finn grew up with preppers. Comparing me to him is like putting a NASCAR driver up against a soccer mom. You realize you just made my point, said Cyrus. Craig did not reply. Look, said Cyrus. You and I can hold our own most of the time. But when it comes to wilderness survival, we're out of our element. He paused. You wouldn't survive more than a couple of days in the wild. Without help, neither would I. I don't know, replied Craig. I mean, come on, we're not talking rocket science. They stood alone on the dark country road. Not a single home or business as far as the eye can see. Cyrus couldn't recall the last time he saw a vehicle of any kind. It was hard to believe Austin was a few miles away. The sun had set hours ago, yet the temperature changed little. Humidity hung heavy in the air, creating a thin layer of moisture that clung to his skin and dampened his clothes. He lifted the dreads off the back of his neck and mopped away the sweat with an old bandana. You think what you want to think, but I'm just gonna say, if the zombie apocalypse ever happens, first thing we're doing is getting on over wherever the hell those Texas boys are. The rest of the world could go to shit, but those boys, he shook his head, they'll be kicking back like it's just another day. Actually, interjected Craig, Teague's from Louisiana, he's Cajun. Texan, Cajun, it doesn't matter, said Cyrus. Their crew has some serious survival skills, and we do not. Craig shook his head. Come on, hear me out. All I'm saying is it can't be that hard. I've played enough video games. You did not just say that out loud. Cyrus spun around to face Craig. Are you serious? You know what I mean. Cyrus laughed. There's so much stupid in that statement, I don't even know where to start. He sighed and shook his head. Why the hell do we always end up talking about this trash when we're in the middle of nowhere? Seriously, why does this never come up when we're in the middle of a city, in broad daylight, surrounded by lots of people? Let's just find the trailhead. I'm all done with stupid talk for the night. We can finish this conversation when we're on the beach in Tampa. A warm, gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. A cacophony of frogs and crickets surrounded them in the dark. It never ceased to amaze him how loud nature could be. To his right, he spied a narrow path cutting through the tall grass. Bingo, he thought. Stepping off the roadway, they followed the trail as it led into a vast meadow. The tall grass, thick and gnarled as it was, slowed their pace. Cyrus couldn't help but wonder how many chiggers were hiding in the weeds, waiting for their chance to hop on and feast. As far as he was concerned, of all the creepy crawlies out there, chiggers were the worst. Just thinking about the tiny creatures was enough to conjure up phantom itchiness and tingling skin. They cleared the meadow and hiked up a small hill, stopping in front of an old abandoned farmhouse. A remains from an era long past. The house was an impressive sight with its large windows, generous front porch, and steep gables. Even in its current decrepit state, it was remarkable. The faint sound of music and laughter seeped through the cracks around the boarded-up windows. A small creature scurried from the shadows, disappearing into a cluster of shrubs nearby. Perched on a branch high in a tree, a barn owl hooted. It glared down at them, blinking once, then spread its massive wings and took off into the night. Cyrus stepped cautiously onto the porch. The boards creaked and moaned under the weight of his heavy boots. Above the weather-worn front door, the words, Hotel Austin, were scrawled with faded black spray paint. On the door itself, Wanderers welcome. All others, fuck off, was carved deep into the wood as a warning. With a loud, sustained creak, he pushed the door open. I see the owners haven't gotten around to fixing things up yet, he said over his shoulder as he stepped across the threshold. Broken glass crunched under his feet. All manner of debris littered the floor. Used cigarette butts, empty candy wrappers, and old food wrappers. Open holes in the walls exposed the lathe and gave a view into the room adjacent. Graffiti covered every accessible surface. The air reeked of booze, stale cigarettes, and mold. Across the room, what remained of the fireplace stood across a backdrop of grimy old wallpaper, broken fixtures, and what could either be graffiti or blood. In places like these, it could be either one. A young woman sauntered out of the kitchen, smiling, beer bottle in hand. She swayed her hips to the music playing behind her as she strolled toward the newcomers. Welcome, travelers, she said. She stopped in front of Cyrus and stared boldly into his eyes. A flush of warmth spread throughout his body. Her hair was an unruly mass of brown dreadlocks that hung along her jawline. Across the bridge of her nose, a small cluster of freckles gave her a childlike appearance. "Got a name?" she asked, smirking as she played with the gold ring on her bottom lip. Yeah, Cyrus. This here's Craig." The young woman shifted her gaze to Craig, then back to Cyrus. She flashed a coy smile. "I'm Molly." Cyrus shuffled his feet. Molly stared, her dark brown eyes gazing into his soul. Unable to think of any words to say to this fascinating creature, he stood still and smiled awkwardly. Behind him, Craig snickered. A slim, blond man wandered out of the kitchen, several years older than Molly. He had the look of a drifter with his short hair and scruffy beard. Cyrus recognized him right away. "Molly, what the hell? You walked away with my lighter," he slurred. Never taking her eyes off Cyrus, Molly replied, "Mags, this is Cyrus and Craig." Mags chuckled and reached out his hand. "I know these two. How the hell are you doing? Last time I saw you was in New Orleans." He paused and rubbed his chin. "That was a wild time." Cyrus never thought he would be glad to have someone interrupt a conversation between him and a beautiful woman. But here he was. He smiled. Yeah, something like that. How many others are here tonight?" "I want to say 7, plus our group, so about 11. Mags replied. He turned to Molly. "Am I missing anyone?" Molly shrugged. Mags shifted his attention back to Cyrus. "One group's in the first bedroom at the top of the stairs. The other one's down here in the parlor. Anyone we know?" "Nah," replied Mags. "At least, I don't know any of them. There are 2 different groups as far as I can tell. The ones in the parlor are all greenies. They're young and stupid." He scoffed. "I had to yell at him a little while ago. Idiots were setting up firecrackers inside." He rolled his eyes. "We're literally sitting in a giant pile of kindling. How dumb can you be? You should have seen the looks they gave me. Like they've never been told no in their entire lives." He scowled. "I don't remember us being that dumb or entitled when we started out. Do you?" "Man, I'm sure we were pretty stupid. Maybe even more so." Cyrus smirked and shot a sideways glance at Craig. "In fact, some of us still haven't grown up." Mags chuckled. Yeah. I hear ya. Hey, we're hanging out in the kitchen. Want to join?" Cyrus had to admit, spending a few hours getting to know Molly was tantalizing, but exhaustion had already set in. "Nah, man," he replied. "We got an early hop tomorrow." "We've been walking for hours," added Craig. "I, for one, just want to crash." Molly sighed. She slowly scanned Cyrus from head to toe. "Whatever. Y'all are missing out, though." She turned and meandered back to the kitchen. "Well, suit yourselves," replied Mags. "I'd probably try to sleep up in the attic tonight. The middle bedroom's ours, and I can't guarantee we're gonna be quiet." He winked. Turning to stroll back to the kitchen, Mags called over his shoulder. "Oh, and be careful on the stairs. Some treads in the middle are about to go. If you crash through, you could seriously hurt yourself. Broken bones suck." Thankful for the warning, Cyrus headed toward the stairs with Craig. At the threshold of the parlor, he paused and peered at the occupants inside. Mags didn't exaggerate. They were young, far too clean for seasoned riders. Their clothes lacked the usual wear and tear. The teens glared at him. After nodding a quick hello, he left them alone. He pulled out his flashlight and climbed up the stairs, taking particular care to test each tread before applying his full weight. At the center of the staircase, he discovered the weak boards, exactly where Mags said they would be. He set his foot down. The step groaned and buckled. Not wishing to crash through, he shifted his body and hopped over the weak steps, landing safely at the top. Passing the first room, he peered in to find 3 people sitting on the grimy floor, deep in conversation. They passed a liquor bottle between them. Seeing him standing there, they halted and nodded in greeting. One of the men held the bottle in the air, offering to share. Cyrus decided he liked this group better than the one downstairs. After politely declining the invitation, he and Craig continued down the corridor. To their left was the bathroom, or rather, what remained of it. A sliver of wood was all that was left of the door. Blackened with mold and filth stood alongside the grimy clawfoot tub. Shards of broken mirror lay shattered around the fractured sink. In the next room, soiled clothing, empty bottles, and discarded cigarette butts littered the floor. The room reeked of the musky scent of sex, cheap whiskey, and stale smoke. At the end of the hall, he paused at the entry to another bedroom. This one was larger than the others. An old, stained mattress lay in the far corner against the wall. Across the room, 2 large windows overlooked the rolling hills below. A rat squeaked and scampered across the floor, disappearing into a dark corner. Cyrus glanced back at Craig, who wrinkled his nose and shook his head. He didn't want to stay in that room either. They turned and climbed the second flight of stairs to the attic. At the top was a vast open room, like an enormous wooden cavern. Exposed rafters soared overhead like the belly of an old seafaring ship. The peculiar scent of mothballs permeated the air. Startled by the intruders, 2 birds launched into the air, escaping through a hole in the roof. "Skylight's bigger than I remember," joked Cyrus. Craig smirked and studied the hole. "Ah, nothing like an unobstructed view of the stars." He slapped Cyrus on the shoulder. "Also, bonus, if it rains, we could shower right here." Cyrus shook his head. "Let me just say, if it rains and you strip down while I'm in the room, I will beat your naked ass." Craig grinned, mimicking Molly's tone and gestures. He responded, "Whatever. You'll be missing out, though." They cleared a space near the wall and laid out their sleeping bags. Muted voices floated up through the floorboards, along with the familiar scent of weed. Craig pulled his beanie off of his head. "At least the neighbors aren't too loud tonight," he said, as he folded the hat with the Bruins bee facing up and set it on the floor. Within minutes, they were both fast asleep. Cyrus awoke to shouts coming from downstairs. He lay there, eyes closed, listening. A faint hint of smoke permeated the air. Rubbing his eyes, he sat up. "Yo, Craig, you awake?" No response. He reached over. Craig's sleeping bag was empty. Something was wrong. He picked up his flashlight and clicked it on. Smoke whirled around in the beam. He scanned the area. No sign of Craig. The smoke grew thicker. His eyes stung. He sat there, trying to clear the fog of slumber from his mind and make sense of what was taking place. Down below, he could hear pounding feet running on wooden floors. Someone yelled. Craig bolted into the room. "Dude, we gotta get out now! The place is burning!" He grabbed hold of Cyrus's arm and yanked. "Wait, our gear!" Cyrus pulled back. "Let it go!" Craig shouted, fear in his voice. "We don't have time. The whole downstairs is in flames." They rushed down to the second floor and halted. People were yelling and running everywhere. An ominous red glow emanated from the stairs. Through the heavy smoke, they saw the silhouettes of 2 people disappear into the crimson haze. Suddenly, the crashing noise of splintering wood echoed throughout the house, followed by ear-splitting screams. Acrid, black smoke filled the air, making it impossible to see or breathe. Cyrus struggled to inhale. Craig grabbed him by the arm. "Come on!" he shouted as he dragged Cyrus along. Heavy smoke whirled around them. His eyes watered and his lungs burned as each breath drew in more of the noxious smoke. Feeling their way along the wall, they pushed through the doorway of the nearest bedroom and found a window. Using his elbow, Craig broke the glass. Fresh air. Cyrus leaned out and inhaled deeply, filling his lungs. His chest spasmed. He coughed uncontrollably. Below them stood a narrow overhang. This was their way out. Craig stepped backward and signaled for him to go first. Cyrus climbed out of the window and stepped down onto the metal roof. Slanted and smooth, the surface made it difficult for him to maintain his footing. Slipping and sliding, he shimmied his way to the edge and jumped down to the ground, where he watched as Craig jumped and landed beside him. Safe from the fire, he lay there on the ground, hacking and wheezing as he expelled the smoke from his lungs. Inside the house, a woman screamed. Cyrus jumped to his feet and sprinted around the building, trying to find a way in. Angry red flames consumed the front porch. Smoke billowed out of every crack and crevice. As he rounded the corner to the back porch, the kitchen door burst open. A young man tumbled out onto the ground, shrieking as he frantically battered at his clothes. Without hesitation, Cyrus ran to him and snuffed out the flames. "Your friend's in there?" he asked as he stood up. The kid nodded. It was one of the teens from the parlor. Reaching out to help him to his feet, Cyrus declared, "We need to get them out of there." The teen didn't take his hand. A look of panic swept over his face. Shaking his head, he scurried backward on all fours. Without saying a word, the boy jumped to his feet and took off into the woods. "Goddamn coward!" yelled Cyrus. He turned to Craig. "Looks like it's up to us." Craig remained still and silent. "Come on," pleaded Cyrus. "You know we can't leave those people in there. They'll die. We have to help whoever we can." Craig nodded solemnly. It was obvious Craig didn't want to go back inside the burning building. In all honesty, neither did Cyrus. He wanted to run off into the woods and get as far away as possible. But he knew there was no way he could live with himself if he didn't at least try to save some of the others. He stepped onto the small back porch and looked inside. Heavy smoke billowed in the air. Orange flames licked around the doorframe leading into the living room. A profound sense of dread crept over him. He pushed it back. More screams erupted, followed by the sound of pounding feet as people upstairs ran around in terror. Cyrus covered his face with his arm and charged into the house. In the living room, heavy smoke made breathing difficult and hindered his vision. Were it not for the flames burning so bright, He wouldn't have been able to see anything. Crouching low, he made his way to the bottom of the stairs. At the entrance to the parlor, he paused and peered inside. Red-hot flames consumed the entire room, ravaging all in its wake. He stepped sideways, bumping his foot against something soft and heavy. Looking down, he found a body buried under burning rubble. He kicked off the flaming debris, grabbed hold of the body, and pulled. Craig placed a hand on his shoulder. Cyrus stopped. The boy was dead. There was no helping him. Sad at the senseless loss, he surrendered the body to the flames and stood up, turning his focus on the stairs. Orange, red, and blue flames climbed up the walls, illuminating the area with an eerie glow. Able to see the entire staircase for the first time, he realized why no one had tried to use them. Halfway up, trapped in a gaping hole, were two bodies twisted around one another, engulfed in blue flames, burned beyond recognition, their mouths frozen in perpetual screams. The old house shuddered and buckled. A blanket of flames undulated along the ceiling like an angry sea of fire. He glanced over at Craig. They locked eyes. Craig made the sign of the cross and kissed his St. Christopher medal. The house moaned. The eerie sound of splintering wood crept through the walls. A thunderous crash rang out as what remained of the dilapidated old house collapsed in a fiery heap